Here we are.
So that's it. Okay. That was the
Sunday morning.
Like,
Yeah,
yes.
I had it all ready to go. See,
All right.
we're becoming
Well
pro streamers, YouTubers with a
yes,
massive
slowly,
following.
slowly. We had another comment from last week. Our regular audience
We did.
left a comment.
His
Thank you for the comment, by the way. If ever you watch this particular video, our faithful listener,
listener,
viewer. I don't know if they're watching or listening or both.
I know that he really likes what we talk about and what we do. And so
there might be more than one person. If ever we just decided to, I might actually not like full on promote, but anyway, it's part of the topic on writing.
Yeah, it is.
As in picking up my newsletter, and that's I just as I joined and I was waiting for you for a minute and setting the text on the description of the video that is now streaming. I just vaguely wondered, okay, because I do get the notification from my calendar to write and send my newsletter every Sunday also, that I've not been doing for the last 2 years.
That notification's been there for 2 years.
Well, it's been there for more than 2 years,
forever.
But it's been there forever, and whether I do it or not, but I've consistently not been doing it since 2020.
But that just
and
demeans
I was not doing it very often before that either, to be honest.
That demeans your calendar. It means it's just like your calendar becomes wallpaper. You just like, yeah, whatever, doesn't it?
What?
So you've had that
notification. This is the same conversation as the computer stuff. Because why do I keep like 37, 75, 120 tabs open at any one time?
No, that's different. That's different.
It is the same thing. It's like,
no, it's not. It's completely different, because isn't your calendar meant to be, in the ideal world, like holy ground? Like if it's in your calendar,
holy ground, there's no such thing, James.
What? There's no such thing as holy ground, or there's no such thing as
holy ground to begin with?
Okay.
No, there is no such thing.
Because
so if you use references I don't understand, we're not going to get anywhere.
You've never heard that phrase?
Never heard that phrase. I'm joking.
Wow, you're even more unholy. You've been reading too many Dresden Files, developing.
Yes, I don't know about too much, but because I'm getting to the end of it, which is the end of what's published, of course. Anyway, yeah. So
it's fine. We'll move all over the place in this. What I was going to say is that the
calendar, please.
The calendar. Yeah, I was going to talk about the calendar first, but I was going to talk about something else before that. But the calendar first, so that if I have it in the calendar, like I kind of like, I'm like, I take it out if it's not going to happen. I keep my calendar pretty, because I'm sad, keep clean.
Yes, we established that you're pretty sad, and you do the same things with the same people for years and years and years and years and years. Whereas I get a kick about doing different things. I can't maintain. Not that I can't, I don't. And my calendar is first. I tried several times of planning everything. I don't keep it up. It doesn't work for me. Or I'm not making it work. I don't know which one it is. Probably I'm not making it work. Blocks of time, scheduling everything. I never hold to it. I don't know how anybody does. I do put things in my calendar that are important, where I have to meet other people, and or reminders that are important to me. And technically, yes, you're right. I should only keep the things that I am doing, and I need to resolve that thing with my newsletter. Resolving it would mean either deleting it and saying, okay, I'm just going to send the last one and say I'm done with this, or get back to it. And the reminder is also like, well, I said I was going to write a newsletter and still not resolved. So it's a weekly reminder that I said I was going to do this, and I've not been doing it for 2 years or more.
This goes to what we're going to talk about. What did you say that what's the title
I have
of this?
A delay.
I had a delay as well. It's because there's updates on my computer that are just being ridiculous.
That's what it is.
It's a Java update, but who cares? Let's just keep going anyway.
Okay.
So
the title for this video,
what did you put?
Well, it always starts with James and Willem's creative sessions, and possibly about, I just changed the rest of the text, possibly about reading books and writing.
Well,
During
that's
the session talk on Sunday, 12th of February, we may well chat about books like The Dresden Files, Bird by Bird, Bullshit Jobs, and more, I'm sure.
so. This is so the writing thing. I can just before we get into the writing thing, I got to tell you. So I did. So we were talking about Dead Cells and we were talking about computer gaming last week.
Yes.
I found that channel that had all the old games that I used to play.
Right.
I don't know how long I spent watching playthroughs on games that I used to play.
Did you spend a considerable amount of time doing that?
I mean, it was. I don't think it was that considerable. It was about an hour or something. It wasn't like huge, but it was. I honestly, the nostalgia trip. Oh my gosh! I didn't realize I played so many different games, and he's got playthroughs for them all. I then, this is the interesting bit, showed it to my 15-year-old, 16-year-old class at school, and they're all boys, and they're looking at it going, "Oh my god, what is this?" I'm like, "This is what I used to play in 1990. It was really good, and it is really good." And
there's a really good limited documentary series on Netflix on the history of video games.
I think Davina might have watched that. I don't know. That sounds really cool. But then I showed them Dead Cells, and they were like, "Oh, okay." And one of them was like, 2D games, no Red Dead Redemption. You need to play Red Dead Redemption. Play Red Dead Redemption. Okay, all right. Maybe I'll get.
It's supposed to be amazing, but it's very different.
Yeah. And then later, I didn't think anything of it. Then later on in the day, at lunchtime, some of like 3 or 4. Someone came up to me and said they're playing Dead Cells on their phone and they can't stop playing Dead Cells on their phone.
The same person who said who was trying to. We're talking to the same people who was talking about Red Dead Redemption.
Different pupil, same group of pupils, but the one who came up and told me
the message had gone through.
Yeah, something had happened, but they're now playing Dead Cells on their phone.
It's really good. I mean, it
is really good.
If any of them go and look on Metacritic or whichever YouTube channel they follow for video games, they will hear like across the board everybody saying it's an amazing video game. So you're not the only one. And when you start playing, you can't stop. So.
Well, they were talking about a game called Ark that they play quite a lot of on the PS4.
I've heard about it, but I don't have a PS4 or 5, so
there's a few
of them. PS3 that I've not touched in ages.
Okay, there are a few of them. We're talking about Ark, and I know that our audience of R02 Tube, or I don't know, I don't want to name his name, but
well, you just did.
No, that's his YouTube name, not his actual name.
YouTube name's okay.
Yeah. But he's going to go try Dead Cells. So I can't get over how good it is. So the massive nostalgia trip, and then this is kind of no segue at all. I was thinking about creativity. Well, it is a segue. I was thinking about creativity and writing. I finished Bullshit Jobs. Oh my god,
so good, right?
Oh my god,
it's really good. I am looking forward to. As soon as I finish this book, I'm going to pick up one of his books, David Graeber, the author of The Bullshit Jobs.
The ending, the way he ends.
Oh, it's majestic. Where he starts and where he ends. It's so good and really beautifully written and amazingly just entertaining as well.
It's not just economics. It's
he starts with a wide open door
culture. It's all of it.
To hopefully speak to a wide audience of people who would normally perhaps not be open to what he says or label him with a crazy lefty radical anarchist communist perspective, and no, I'm not interested in this type of politics. And then but do you feel dead inside in your job? Yes, I do. Let me just check this out.
The other thing that really inspires me about it is that how organically it started as like you have an idea or someone asks you something and you do something.
Did you go and read the original essay?
No, I haven't.
It's worth it.
I thought it might.
No, you have the whole pretty much the premise of the book is in there. It's worth reading. I read it like at the beginning of the book because I read the preface and preface, intro, and preface, the intro, preface, and then I went to read it because just to have the
You,
context.
that's why I didn't. You went down that rabbit hole.
Well, yes, it's the kind of thing I do. I'm like, oh yeah, wait, I should read this to be able to understand it. It seems amazing. So,
but that I love how it started as an essay for Strike magazine or whatever it was, and then it became this thing that he just explored. That whole idea of creativity, I love it when things like that happen. I love it
for sure.
It's and then I started reading Bird by Bird.
Yeah, I read it a long time ago, but I'm sure I need to record all the passages. I mean, actually, I can go get them. I think on my.
So while you're doing
tell
that,
me. No. I'll just listen. I don't need to go and do
so
that.
there's two books. There's two books about writing that I heard about. So I read The War of Art. I think that's brilliant.
I still haven't read on. I haven't read that.
Very easy. You probably read it in a day. Like it's more like it's actually, this is interesting because The War of Art, very accessible, very easy, read it fast, it's very practical, gets in your head, and you're just like do all the stuff about procrastination and that you're saying that you're dealing with. It talks about that. He calls it resistance. Stephen Pressfield in The War of Art. You have to deal with resistance. And then I started reading draft number 4 by John McPhee. Tim Ferriss recommended it. I think Stephen Pressfield might have talked about it, about writing. And I cannot get into it. I start reading, I'm like, what is, I can't. I find it really hard.
What is it about? Is it more technical? What is it?
I think it's because it's so not about writing initially.
Oh.
And
is he talking about his life? What is he talking about?
I can't even remember. It's just it feels like, so Tim Ferriss says his writing is amazing. I haven't read any of his articles, but he runs a writing class that he attended at like whatever Ivy League university it was, and he's referred to as like, yeah, the guy who knows about writing and technical stuff and all of that. So I started reading draft number 4. He's not even talking about writing. He's talking about going somewhere. Well, he's kind of talking about writing. He's talking about doing research for an article and him going somewhere fishing with some. Just like, what is he writing? I don't even know. And Bird by Bird is somewhere in between that. So there's this draft number 4 extreme of,
and Tim Ferriss used to swear by it. I think I'd heard about Bird by Bird from Tim Ferriss, but I stopped following Tim Ferriss a while back. I don't really follow what he does anymore.
I dip in and out of him. So
I mean, I got bored of him at some point. And you read more books than I did. I think I've only read the 4-Hour Workweek, really. I listened to his podcast for a while.
I started with the 4-Hour Chef.
I go back to it occasionally if I see a guest that I'm really interested, but I've also just slowed down on podcasts since I've been working from home and mostly staying at home the last 2 years.
Whereas
I don't listen to a lot of podcasts.
I tend to listen to podcasts to and from school in the drive in, and that works really well. Davina can listen to podcasts while she's cooking and stuff. I can't do that.
Oh yeah, I do that.
I can't do it. It just
I also moved to listening to a lot of stuff on YouTube. You know, that Spotify and YouTube have taken over top spots as podcast platforms, and there's tons of basically their audio conversations, but they're on YouTube.
But don't you get annoyed with all the adverts? The adverts just so
I do get annoyed with all the adverts, and there's a lot of them. So you're correct.
But Spotify,
that is a reason to. But it's a habit I developed in the last 3 years to just go to YouTube to follow a number of content, including some long form conversations that may exist on podcasts, but so there's a French long form conversation podcast that is on YouTube first, and they stream and then they go on audio, but there's a delay. So, but I don't, anyway, that's one reason why I would go to YouTube first, and then I just started getting used to it. But then there's more ads than there was 2 years ago, so I don't know.
Yeah. And do you listen to that on your phone or your computer?
Computer.
So you have it on and it's just there and you're listening to it and all of that. That's what you do?
Sometimes if I think of it, I'll put my my speaker and put a podcast on, but there's a lot of times I just carry my computer into the kitchen while I'm cooking or cleaning or whatever.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So the John McPhee, that's his name, I hope it's right. Draft number 4 is like, doesn't feel like it's about writing at all. The War of Art feels like it's completely about creativity and writing. Bird by Bird is in the middle. I started reading it and I really like it.
Yeah, it's
I
small and
really,
it's
really
really
like it.
inspiring. It's nice.
It's really inspiring. And she's not only talking about Anne Lamott, right? She's not only
Yeah,
talking about writing, she's talking about her life. And it feels like this brutally honest conversation about trying to write.
yeah,
But it's not only about writing, it's also about like who you are. That's what I'm getting from it. Who
yeah,
you are and what you're interested in. And everybody thinks about the same shit and gets worried about the same stuff. And
yeah,
everybody's thinking about what everyone else is thinking about. And it's really good. I
yeah.
love it. And it has inspired me to want to think about how I write and why I'm writing and what I'm doing. And it doesn't have to be perfect and just
I
write
think it's a
anyway.
good topic because I talked about writing at the end of last week or a little bit,
You did. And this is the
and I
struggle
didn't do
you're in
anything
right now.
since. You know,
So, and this is what you're grappling with, isn't it? The newsletter, not the newsletter, writing on LinkedIn, not writing on LinkedIn, what am I going to do?
it could be what I'm grappling with. Yeah, sure.
I mean, I don't know. You said about earlier on about the newsletter,
Yeah,
but also
agreed.
LinkedIn and
Yeah.
trying to write stuff. Do you have a process, or do you just is it just whatever?
No, I'm not good with process. You know that. I'm really not good with process. I'm really, really not good with it.
But
Um,
she does talk about that in Bird by Bird. She really talks about having
a
just
process.
just write the 1-inch frame. It's not. I don't even think it's a process, really. She
So
talks.
what if I write an article because I've never finished anything else? Although no, that's not true. I finished a draft of the short story I sent you last year, but I don't spend time on it writing. That's my main
Okay.
problem. And scheduling it comes last. And I've not been scheduling it the last forever and that's part of the reason I'm not doing my newsletter anymore. It just went out the window. But I don't know how else to say it. Now, I do have some people say that they like my writing, not a lot, but that I should keep going at it. If it's writing articles for work-related context, I was just wondering how much I was going to say because even though nobody's watching, it's still live. But I feel like I have a lot of thoughts, a lot of stuff, but I feel like I don't have anything to say that's interesting, or that I deem to be interesting, or that I deem to be worthy of me saying. Not worthy, it's not the right word. Important enough that I really believe in, or that I think is important, and that I think develops my opinion. Like the more it goes, the less interested I am in commenting on news in the marketing communication world, if you will. And so my stance tends to go back to what are the basics, because I believe that that's lacking, but it's not really, most of the time, I don't think it's really newsworthy, if that makes sense. It's not about the metaverse. And the only thing I want to write, actually, I'll mention the metaverse because that's like the only thing I would want to write is how it's all nonsense, even though there's a couple of other people that talk about that exactly. Another friend, James, as well. I have multiple James friends, but I think it's quite common as a name.
There were 5 when I was at school in my form.
Yeah, there you go. So I thought weeks ago that I should do that in French because there's probably, or I haven't seen enough people doing it in French, as in old man ranting about the metaverse. Because there's a lot of young people getting new jobs about the metaverse, but the metaverse just doesn't exist. That's the main problem. So anybody talking, it doesn't exist.
What do you mean
not
it
a
doesn't
thing.
exist?
It's not a
It's
thing.
not
It's just made
physical.
up. No. I mean, as in, there is no, like the whole talk about metaverse. There is no metaverse. It doesn't exist. The metaverse is a word that comes from Snow Crash in Neil Stephenson's book. And there's a lot of money invested in the idea of it. But by definition, the idea of a metaverse is a connected virtual reality world, or if not virtual reality, let's say virtual of some kind. The closest thing there is the internet. Otherwise, what we're talking about are virtual worlds or video games. And mostly what people are talking about is gaming. So talk about gaming if that's what you're talking about. And otherwise, and the things that have been created, such as to say that they're the metaverse, so Meta's Horizon Worlds, for example, nobody's in it. Nobody's using that. There are big problems around the virtual reality headsets. They're uncomfortable. They're too heavy. One person, like 15 to 20%, I think it's 15%, the last numbers I've heard, get dizzy and nauseous, so they can't use them. So any technology...
You've tried it, haven't you?
I've tried virtual reality headsets. I've never been in like any of the metaverse or whatever. And then when people talk about Roblox or Fortnite, then that's gaming. It's not the metaverse, it's gaming. And each one of those platforms are separate entities, just like the gaming platform, the PS5 network is separate from the Nintendo one. So there's nothing metaversal about it. It's just a BS word being tagged along, and that there's a lot of millions of dollars behind it. So, and it's being researched, there's a lot of stuff being developed, but as long as it's their own islands, it's not that anyway. And there's no one definition for what the metaverse is. And 99%, I assert 99% of the people talking about it like it's an opportunity makes no sense. Now, and there's also, and this is where I get boring with my talk, I think,
no,
rather than evangelizing it.
Yeah.
This is also, and I had the same kind of tone when I wrote about NFTs last year or the year before. When you're doing marketing and advertising, for a business, it's anecdotal at best to use this type of emerging technologies. It's not your business. Now, you might find a fun way to do a campaign, and your agency is going to win an award, and you're going to get like 20,000 people interested in it. That's great. Fine. You do that and spend a little bit of money on it. Talk about the metaverse and do a promo in it. But you also, in terms of the metaverse, mostly you run the risk of being ridiculous, like the European Commission that did an event in some virtual world and had 5 people attending and spent 350,000 euros of people's of taxpayers' money. So,
oh my God.
And or one that I saw was Carrefour, so massive supermarket brand like Tesco in France, or one of the biggest in the world, to be honest. Held a recruitment drive where people had to put a headset on and go into the virtual world, and there's nobody there, and it's ridiculous to have people believe that you can use that and that it's the future. Now, so if you are a tech company like Meta, and Meta's proving that it's failing, but otherwise, because they just poured billions in it and they're just completely failing to make anything work, and they're firing people left, right, and center, because that's nothing to do with, little to do with the metaverse, but a lot to do with the economic situation, the war. And now they're just a tragic and horrific earthquake in Turkey. And Syria, and 23,000 people died already. And I realized that in 2003, 30,000 people died, and I either didn't know or forgot about it. So weird. And it's just, anyway, there's a lot going on. I want to circle back also about Bigger Than Us, the documentary movie I saw this week. So unless it's your direct business, so you are a business building 3D stuff, in which case it is your business and you're marketing the idea if it benefits you. But if you're selling anything else and you think your marketing should really be invested in the metaverse, you're talking nonsense. That's not what marketing is. In marketing and your advertising doesn't go, and you don't need digital transformation through the metaverse if you have any business other than developing VR headsets technology, or you have some kind of virtual world. Like, it's not your business.
So there's a few different points here that I think are really good, because I'd never considered all of this. I just heard metaverse, knew about Meta, and that's
A
about it.
metaverse is just anyway. It doesn't mean
But
anything.
yeah,
Most
I
people
get
don't
that.
know what it
That's what I'm
means.
realizing. That's what I'm realizing. So from what you're saying, the idea of the metaverse is the idea that there's a virtual world that everybody's part of.
Yeah, like Ready Player One.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Ready Player
Now
One.
everybody wants to, because Ready Player One takes it from Snow Crash, which is where the word of the metaverse comes from. But so this is interesting because Ready Player One, as opposed to the metaverse in Snow Crash,
Mhm.
Snow Crash is like the internet, and because it was proto, more or less, like before it was written, even before or at the beginning of the internet.
Hang on, what's Snow Crash?
Snow Crash. Oh, you haven't read Snow Crash?
No.
What? You need to read
Sorry.
Snow Crash.
Okay, what is it? Tell me what it is.
Snow Crash is a science fiction book by Neil Stephenson, and he put the word metaverse is in there. That's where it comes from.
Okay.
It features a pizza delivery guy, street samurai, that gets entangled in some adventure. Basically, the reason why he's a pizza delivery, so he works as a pizza delivery guy and hacker in the metaverse on his off hours. That's how it begins.
When was it published?
1990, late 80s, early 90s. Let me check.
Okay.
Good question.
And what else has he written? Has he written other
Tons
stuff
of things.
like that?
Oh my God. So Neil Stephenson has written tons. Cryptonomicon, Anathema. I've only read two, to be honest.
Not heard of this guy.
1992.
Okay. It just sounds like The Matrix.
It's well, that's where it comes from. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know this. I'm feeling uneducated now. I need to go.
Oh wow, I thought you knew this.
No.
And Ready Player One is copied on that, and William Gibson's Neuromancer.
Yeah.
So Snow Crash and Neuromancer are considered to be the two bases for everything to do with cyberpunk as a genre.
Right. Okay.
I prefer Snow Crash. Might be a controversial.
Okay. I haven't read that. I haven't read Neuromancer. The other guy, of course, is Philip K. Dick in this world of cyberpunk. Surely.
I wouldn't call him. I wouldn't have.
Really?
Pegged him
Android's
on
Dream of Electric Sheep.
Yeah, but generally speaking, no. But that's a lot more. So Philip K. Dick to me is science fiction, but science fiction that makes you think philosophically about a lot of inherent ethical problems that are not necessarily cyberpunk.
Okay.
Now,
I see.
Blade Runner, yes, but if you read the novella, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, I read it a long time ago. I would have to reread it, but I don't think you see necessarily Blade Runner as the look of it.
So cyberpunk being this kind of technology is everywhere kind of thing. How would you describe cyberpunk?
Okay, so cyberpunk,
edgy.
I would describe it as it's the mix of technology and dark, dystopian use of technology, and usually the genre tropes are that there's a lot of cybernetic enhancements. Mega corporations control everything, which is still the direction we're headed in. And or already there, depending. Dark, kind of like all dirty and messy and
rainy. Yeah. I'm thinking of
Blade Runner is a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
Well, not really. Blade Runner is not all the way over into cyberpunk.
Because
I don't know what the shorthand. I'm curious, actually.
Would Black Mirror be cyberpunk?
I don't think so. No. Well, some of them might be. No. No, and most of the tropes from cyberpunk are. All right. So, what do they say as a definition? Merriam-Webster has a definition, or Cambridge Dictionary. What do you prefer?
I don't mind. Probably Cambridge, but it doesn't matter.
It's defined in the dictionary is defined as science fiction dealing with future urban societies dominated by computer technology.
Future urban societies. Okay.
A genre that often features countercultural anti-heroes trapped in a dehumanizing high-tech future.
By
His
that
roots extend
definition,
back to the technical fiction of the 1940s and 50s.
yeah.
But the word cyberpunk was coined by writer Bruce Bethke, I didn't know that, who wrote a story with that title in 1980. And he created the term by combining cybernetics, the science of replacing human functions, computerized one, and punk, the raucous music of nihilistic sense.
Yeah.
Not until 1984 publication of William Gibson's novel Neuromancer, however, did
Okay, there we go.
cyberpunk really take off as a genre. Yeah. And Neuromancer, the blurb is from Goodreads. In reality, hero protagonist delivers pizza for Uncle Enzo's Cosa Nostra Pizza Inc., which is in the future all the mafias own the pizza
Yeah.
joints. But in the metaverse, he's a warrior prince. Plunging headlong into the enigma of a new computer virus is striking down hackers everywhere. He races along the neon-lit streets on a search and destroy mission for a shadowy virtual villain threatening to bring about infocalypse. Yeah.
I see. Like,
yeah,
okay,
as in
apocalypse. Yeah, information. Yeah.
Snow Crash is a mind-altering romp through future America so bizarre, so outrageous, you'll recognize it immediately. It's really.
Oh,
good.
I thought you were talking about Neuromancer there, but no, you're talking about Snow Crash.
Snow Crash.
Okay.
I
need to read that. I absolutely need to read that.
It's a lot of fun. It's really good. I should read more Neil Stephenson. I've read a couple of his books, and Cryptonomicon is awesome.
Okay.
Oh, Ready Player One is fun, but it's not very good. Neil Stephenson is a good writer. Like his plots are convoluted. His writing is really good. It's much bigger books, much more demanding, and much more interesting. Ready Player One was all right, but it's not very good. Let's be honest. It's fun. Well, it's a fun beach read, you know.
I haven't read it. I just know that people.
You haven't read it?
No, people said the book was better than the film, and I quite enjoyed the film.
I always thought that basically one ruins the other. Whichever you consume first, you enjoy, and the other ones are kind of ruined.
Okay,
because they're sufficiently different. So the movie tries to handle some of the less, at least, currently appropriate depictions of male, female, or gender relations or things like that. So the movie tries to solve that and does sort of a little bit of a better job. Whereas the book sometimes does things where you're like, really? Okay, that's a bit weird.
Okay.
There's that, but then the book also doesn't have any licensing problems. So it features a lot more stuff from early video games, from all sorts of licensing that are much cooler, I think. Whereas the film has the licensing worlds available through the movie rights of the studio, which works out well for the movie, but it's disappointing because it's not the ones from the book.
I see.
Now it's detailed, but it's geeky. So you're like, oh, well, they don't have the Gundam monsters. That sucks.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's like less of the Pac-Man and early video games references, which is all the search he goes in is a history of video games, which is fun.
But it sounds like,
and it matches back what we talked about last week. So a lot of the titles, the machines are in the search, the enigmas and everything that they're doing in the book, but less so in the movie.
But it sounds like Snow Crash is much more. It doesn't get dated. It sounds like it will just be universal.
Oh yeah,
the way he's written.
Totally.
Okay.
No. It doesn't get dated. It's just in an alternate world of, you know. But so anyway, all that back said to this idea in the book or any other, this is the difference I was going to make. So the Oasis, the companies at hand, Meta, Facebook, and anybody else, are trying to do the same thing that is happening in Ready Player One, which is arguably not exactly the same thing as the metaverse from a philosophical standpoint. By that, I mean that in Ready Player One, it's one platform, one business.
Yeah, I understand.
Whereas the idea of the metaverse in the first place, as imagined by Neil Stephenson and a bunch of other writers similarly, is like the internet, interconnected world.
Completely universal, yeah.
Yeah, so now we've more or less not left that totally, but the internet is not really, there's walled gardens that we're in. So Apple's got its own walled gardens, but there's different apps within the App Store. Facebook has wanted to be the main reference as Facebook, which it sort of is, but it's sort of slowing down crumbling, but we're very much in single businesses and worlds, not sharing,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
taking us away from unfortunately and sadly, away from what the internet was a few years ago, 10, 20 years ago, at the beginning of, or in the early 2000s, let's say, maybe less than 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Cross-functional platforms sharing.
It was.
And where users were empowered if you wanted to. Now, there's still businesses operating, but you don't have a walled garden. So young people and pupils and students, and I think we talked about this kind of stuff before. Anyhow, have that. So any one business trying to do and talk about the metaverse is trying to have the main thing, but as long as none of this is connected, it's not at all what the metaverse is, regardless.
I'm with you.
That's the first concept.
I'm going to coin a new word that might take off: platformization.
I'm sure I've heard it.
Okay, I thought it was new.
No.
But that's what everyone wants to be. Even the walled garden thing, that's the phrase I was thinking of as you.
And the other funny thing is, you look at Fortnite. Fortnite didn't need the word metaverse to be popular and insanely popular with people, nor did it doesn't need it now.
No,
it's just doing its thing. It's gaming.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about anything to do with the metaverse that is popular, you're probably talking about gaming. So my other friend James says, "Well, talk about gaming because that's what it is."
Yeah, it is,
and that's what makes it work. It's the game, not the fact that it's metaversal, whatever that means.
Well, I remember reading. Have you ever read Accidental Empires?
No.
By Robert X. Cringely. Have you heard of him? Robert X. Cringely?
No, I don't
He's a
think so.
tech writer who was there at the beginning of like computers and stuff. Accidental Empires, I read it years and years and years ago. Really, really good book about how personal computers and computers developed. So, and I read it I read it when I was at uni, I think. It's old. He's an interesting writer as well, but he talks about the personal computer didn't mean anything until spreadsheets. Spreadsheets was a killer app. Once you had that, then an email is a killer app for the internet technology until email. So what's the killer app for whatever it is next? Nobody knows. And I think that the blockchain technology is really interesting and very powerful, but I don't think there's a killer app yet. So there's no,
and even just like that's also
it.
People talking about the blockchain for years now.
Yeah.
No, I could be wrong because I'm not that close. I could be wrong about the metaverse. Maybe there's somebody invented something, but that's what it looks like from the information I have at the moment. Blockchain super interesting, but I don't know if anybody's done anything more interesting than decentralized coins with it. I'm sure there's a bunch of people experimenting, but I don't know what's come out of it.
And that's what once you have the ideal case use and the killer app, then there'll be mass adoption. But I still think it goes back to the thing you're saying about if your business fundamentally is about doing something, solving someone's problem, and you're trying to shoehorn some other amazing thing that you think is amazing technology, whatever, into what you're originally doing, it's not going to work. That thing,
the thing is, you're not doing marketing.
Yes.
You're just being just interested in the latest shiny new thing. And
I'm trying to be cool.
Do you know anything about who you're talking to, what you're selling your product or service, who you're selling your product and service to, what market you operate in? And that's the basis. And so that's what I like to write about. So I emulate other people that I admire, but I don't really, I get bored. So today is the Super Bowl. I'm going to have to watch the ads. I don't have to, but I probably will.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, whatever. I don't, anyway. So writing about, actually, you know what? And the main advice that I was given by, indeed, the friend James that I exchanged a few emails with a couple of weeks ago, because he just got back into writing his newsletter, and he has a lot of people following, and he didn't for a few months. He's usually pretty good with it, but he didn't. I mean, busy with work and family life and whatever. And so on that occasion, we exchanged a couple of emails. And so I said that I was bored about exactly that, writing and commenting on the advertising and marketing industry. And he said, I was the same. So I always have him pegged as somebody I admire for being out there, for being extremely popular, for having a large audience, for keeping up more or less with writing in his blog, intervening, writing stuff on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
writing stuff on Twitter, reacting to things, being in a good standing, reputation, and position within an industry. And he told me that he was also bored, which is also part of the reason why he started writing about gaming, because that's what he liked. And then he moved jobs and found a job as a strategy director for an agency specialized in working with video games.
Wow. Okay.
So anyway, he was like, write about what you like. Write about, there's no time, like, we don't have enough time to, as in, just write about what you like. And I know that there was a phase at the beginning of my newsletter
Mm-hmm.
where I did write every week,
Mm.
and I was writing these long essays about random stuff in my life. And I actually enjoyed
and we're
writing
back to
them.
bird by bird again. This is what she
Yeah,
talks about. Yeah.
I enjoyed writing those. It was a good exercise. So yeah, so maybe I should just do more of that. But and I totally just went with my ideas and inspiration, which is what I'm good at.
Right.
Well,
What you
I think
like.
what I'm good at, by that I mean, I was like, my commitment was to send out the newsletter and to write a 1,500 word piece, because
Mm-hmm.
it was easy to make it longer than much shorter, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would just get started and write something completely random. So I'm not, it's the gardener versus planner stuff.
Yeah.
Ironically, even though that's my job title, I'm not very much good at planning blog posts, writing. But to write something more specific, books, short stories, I need to get into planning. But it's very ironic that for all the ideas that I generate, I have lots of thoughts, lots of ideas, etc. I also don't. It's difficult for me to hold on to anything, to any one of them, if that makes sense. Either because I will convince myself that nobody's interested, or I have 10,000 other ideas that come and that I could, no, it's
I
true.
know.
I'm like,
That's why
I'm
I'm
like,
laughing.
yeah, this is an
It's true.
interesting. Just like I'm surprised that you don't know all the stuff I talked about with the metaverse. I'm like, everybody knows that.
No, I didn't even know about Snow Crash. I feel like
And so either I'm going to go, everybody knows
worried.
that, or I'm going to go, yeah, but it's not that interesting for me to talk about. I need to, or write about. I need to have something that's really truly original, and then I'm going to rack my brains and then give
So
up.
because I'm reading Bird by Bird, you are playing into everything that she says in the book about people who say they want to write and don't write. And then
Yeah.
she also
Oh
talks
yeah,
a lot
totally.
of trying to dispel the illusions of writing.
I should
as
read
well.
it again, probably.
It's so good. But the idea that I really like
Well,
is that
certainly dispelling the illusions. And one thing that I'm not doing
yeah.
is just sitting down to write.
But this this is the thing I was going to say, because the idea that she said about a 1-inch frame, I don't know if you remember that.
I can't know.
It's
Go ahead.
so there's two things. The first bit is she does a whole it feels like a page, but it's not, of all the faff that goes into before she actually writes.
Yes.
All of the procrastination, all of the nonsense, all of that. And then at some point she says, "I'll see. I've got a 1-inch frame in front of me where I write. That's a reminder to whatever issue it is, just write as if just one bit. So if you're, I don't know, writing a story about the metaverse, write about what your one tiny little window, write something about that into that whole thing. If the metaverse is a huge issue, just write about that one tiny thing." And I think it's more about, she didn't really mention about getting started or just actually writing. She talks a bit about crappy first drafts as well. But that 1-inch window thing, I was like, wow, that's really good. That's really good. Just write something that's small, and then it will lead you somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's, as I'm reading the book, I'm thinking she talks about those people who just sit down and write and everything comes are a bit annoying. And I've had occasions where I've written something and it's been totally fully formed and it's come out and I've hardly changed anything, and then I've reread it and gone, that's really good. That's happened to me a few times. But most of the time is a bit of a slog.
Yeah.
There's just trying to write
Yeah,
something.
yeah. I think I don't know what anyway. Also just admitting that I'm a lot of talk and I don't really write. But that said, I do have people that appreciate my writing. And as I said last week, I think the person who's like the friend slash acquaintance was like, so how's your writing? I was like, ooh, I forgot about that.
But you need to write. I really do think your ideas are just, I just think it's really cool and interesting. And I think it just needs to be on paper somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't, whatever it is, I don't really, but so it's really interesting that way you started your newsletter was, did you just pick something and write, or did you just write and see where it went and then send it out?
So my main thing was, okay, I'm going to send it out on Sunday. So I need to have written something. And then the other idea
you
of
have
where the
no
inspiration,
topics.
Huh?
You had no topics. You just write
when I
about
started
whatever?
writing. No, the topic came as I write when I sat down.
Wow. Okay.
One time I was sick, so I wrote an ode to man flu. That was
okay.
I tried to mix two things that were weird and or a personal experience with something else. So there's a lot of personal experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And the other idea was, well, to do something different than other newsletters.
Mm-hmm.
To write what I wanted and liked, which I should do more of regardless, rather than trying to think of like what would fit within getting new clients, gigs, whatever. The other idea was this notion that probably comes from a writing book, but I can't remember, a writing class, but it comes from, I know where I heard it from one of the first guests, if not the first guest I had for my podcast back in the day. Podcast is another thing that I'm like, I need to figure out what I'm doing with that. But anyway, and he said that the beginning, your first writing, like your first drafts are all bad.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that you take everything that you write and throw it in a trunk.
Mm-hmm.
And until the trunk is full, that's all the bad writing. You just throw it away.
Mm.
And then at some point you start getting good enough to write stuff that are going to be published. But there's probably, I can't remember how it went, but something like the equivalent of filling the trunk with bad writing as practice, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So my idea was, oh, well, instead of throwing it in a trunk, I'm just going to send it as a newsletter. That'll be my practice writing.
Yeah.
And then I changed because it was taking me too long and I wasn't sure I was getting any traction or if it was interesting to people, even though some people enjoyed it. But I never had a lot of growth to my newsletter and I never figured out why. But maybe because I'm weird and I don't.
You think you're weird?
Yeah, I think
we're all weird. I think I'm
weird.
weird.
Of course we are. Yeah, sure.
So
sure.
you almost made it sound a little bit disparaging, but I don't think you meant it that way.
I think I did.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay. Wow.
I don't know. And then I look at others, like, how are they popular? How are they? Where do they find the time to react to all these things where I'm just either not interested or I can't be bothered or I'm busy or I think that I don't, or I take too long. Some people I think about things and it's either because I'm overthinking it or sometimes I'm like, maybe I'm just not as smart as some of these other people. There's also a large part, I think, of training, if that makes sense. So I was never trained to bring out stuff very fast in high-level studies. I mean by that, so I read that, I think I was talking about it last week, the book I read from a French author.
Yeah, the guy who goes traveling
across the mountains, goes
traveling
and does crazy travel books. So I can't remember if I mentioned the same thing I'm about to say, but he did very high-level literary studies.
You did say that, yeah.
Yeah, I did, right? And I was not, and I was like, well, there's also, it's not just that I'm not as smart as them, is I'm not trained for 5 years to regurgitate and think about things very, very fast in very formalized fashion, to take notes, to write essays based on very formalized ways to do it. And I know the studies, and I'm repeating what I said last week, but the studies that guy did at high level is extremely demanding. So, but I've never done, I didn't finish university. I just went to work. So I don't know, maybe it's certainly a way to disparage myself. But sometimes I seem to come across people that are reacting with the right words where I'm still thinking about what I'm doing. And I'm like, well, are they just faster? Is it me overthinking? Is it a mix of those things? Or I don't know.
I do think there's something about a discipline of it, like, so, and practice, because I forget how much writing I do as a teacher and creating I do as a teacher. And I will quite every so often, at least I would say 2 or 3 times a month, I will write something at the same time as the students are writing. And then there's a timer, there's a big timer on the screen, and I'm having to produce like this thing, and it has to be good. And there's every time, without fail, whenever I'm writing, whether it's a blog post or whether it's in school and I'm writing with them, there's a point in my head where I go, this is terrible. I've written about the wrong thing. This is going to all go horribly wrong. And I've got so used to that voice. I've got so used to it that I'm just like, I'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll work itself out. I'll just keep going and it'll all come together. And it does.
Mm.
It really does. And I think I do think something else that helped is collaging. I really enjoyed collaging from.
I haven't done that in a while.
The course,
you know, there's also another thing, and even though it's going to be disparaging to me and or sound like it, much of the time of the last many years, I have a lot of idle time. I enjoy it, but I also just take my time to do things. I was working on an urgent document for clients last weekend. And Monday I was working with somebody else, and we suddenly had to do like another document, a spreadsheet, mostly copying and pasting information from a PowerPoint to a spreadsheet. The other person I worked with just did it so much faster than I did. I seem to have taken hours to do it. But also I was moaning, and it was like doing it slowly because I don't like copying and pasting information, and I was just double checking everything and making sure like improving it or rereading things. But point was, I did think, well, wait a minute, that person did that really fast. I'm still not finished with it.
Or maybe it's the whole like freelancing versus being in a job thing.
Maybe
Calvin and Hobbes, like you need to be in the right mood, last minute panic. Who knows?
I don't know.
That practice of writing, so the constant practice of writing, and then the mindset shift for me with collaging was having an idea and then splurging it on the paper with whatever pictures, colors, and learning to trust the process was a big shift for me. That it looked terrible. It always looks terrible at some point. And then it's rare that I'm not happy with the results of a collage. It's really, really rare. And that process, that whole natural kind of cycle of up and down, it's terrible, it's not, and then getting to a point where it's done. And done means the page is covered in something. But for collaging, I think carried over to my writing of I'm writing, I kind of know what I want to say. It's terrible. It's still terrible. It's going to come together. It'll come together. It'll come together. Let's hope it comes together. And then finishing, and it does. Having done that a lot, I think makes a difference.
Yeah.
So when reading the War of Art and trying draft number 4, which I will try at some point, but Bird by Bird is on the money for me. Absolutely.
Yeah, I really loved it. I need to find the passages.
I think you should reread it.
Big Magic by Liz Gilbert was pretty good too. On creativity.
I've never heard of that one.
Ooh, Big Magic. Really? Yeah, a bit of spirituality, creativity, but like a lot of writing and creativity.
Have you read The Artist's Way? Is it The Artist's Way? Is that what it's called?
No, we've talked about it, but I've not read it.
Okay.
And then there's On Writing by Stephen King. That's supposed to be good, on the craft. But I haven't read it.
The other one I was thinking of getting a copy of was The Economist's like book of style guide. They have a style guide, because I do like the writing in The Economist, whatever you might think about its views and politics. I think the writing is excellent.
Yeah, well, it's still a big reference and a lot of smart people writing. So
I like that style guide. But what was that one you just said? So On Writing.
The only
thing I remember about
there's
Stephen
a few
King
others that I can't remember right now.
he said never use adverbs, and for some reason that stuck with me.
Where in on writing? No.
I've never read it, but I read an article where he
Oh.
said never use adverbs. Don't say he walked slowly, say he crept.
Right.
That kind of idea. And I don't know why that stuck with me. I kind of gone off adverbs. But the other one you said before that was
Big Magic.
what's that?
That's Elizabeth Is it Elizabeth Gilbert? The person who wrote Eat, Pray, Love.
Oh, okay. Which I've
And
never
it's her
read.
book on, I haven't read either, but it was, well, let me check. Big Magic was quite enjoyable, a bit creative living beyond fear.
Oh,
It's about her writing process. It's a bit, spiritual. Not spiritual, but sort of. It's good. It's quickly read. The blurb is readers of all ages and walks of life have drawn inspiration and empowerment from Elizabeth Gilbert's books for years. She offers insights into the mysterious nature of inspiration. She asks us to embrace our curiosity and let go of needless suffering. She it's quite fun. Attitudes, approaches, and habits we need in order to live our most creative lives.
but she was a
Balancing between
journalist.
soulful spirituality and cheerful pragmatism.
She's a journalist, right?
Yeah, I liked it. It's very quickly read.
Mm-hmm.
It's also just a bit, wishy-washy or a little bit on the spiritual side, but not in a bad way. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of like, put stuff out into the world and notice. I don't know. I can't remember. But it's good. It's not. I don't recommend it as essential reading, but it's a good book. It's quickly read. I think Bird by Bird is much better because there's a lot of how you feel and how a lot of people feel, but also about how to do it at the same time.
I know it's really great the way there's that whole. It is like she puts her whole thought space out there, and I'm like, I really identify with this. This is exactly what I think as I'm trying to write. She's done it very well. It's definitely a skill. Everyone talks about the quote, the Bird by Bird quote, but there's so much more to it than that. Her brother trying to write the report the day before thing. Because I you need to write, Willem.
I do.
And having said that, we said we were going to write a short story each. You finished yours. I didn't finish mine. I've got a perfectly formed idea. I just haven't written it. Dark Splendor on the Green is the idea. Is the title you gave me.
That's right.
I've got a whole plot. I know exactly what I want to write. I just haven't done it. I think we did talk in one episode about how my nephews were here and we wrote something, and I was really proud of what I wrote. I said to Davina, give me something to write, and she wrote about brick. So I don't know where the idea came from, but my short story was this self-conscious thing that is having a conversation with itself about its own self-awareness and doesn't realize what it is. And the punchline is it's a Lego brick being used to build a house.
Very cool.
And that, I don't know where that is actually. Maybe I should put it on my blog because it's just a funny little story. But that was the
talking about blog. That's another thing I circled back to it, but I think to have a good place for my writing is missing. If that makes sense.
It does make sense.
And I looked at the whole website thing a few months ago, and then I gave up on it. My blog, I need to change it big time. And I need to stop wondering about it. And I write on LinkedIn, but I don't, because now you can kind of just write directly on the social networks. You can.
But would you have a blog just for your creative writing? Do you have anything like that? Where's that story you finished? Is it still in your?
I haven't shared it with anybody. It's still in my computer.
Why don't you just put it on there?
On my website?
Oh, I just had another idea.
Or did you have an idea?
Oh no. I don't like it on Have Ideas. Okay, we'll see. So the idea I had was creative sessions with Willem and James.wordpress.com and just put all our crap on there. Any short stories.
Yeah.
Sure, mostly creative. So it wouldn't be any of the kind of formal commentary on industry and stuff, but short stories.
That
All the
sounds
short
good.
stories, all that stuff, just dump it all on there, read it.
Yeah.
And occasionally post it on social media, write about it. What do you say?
Sure. Sorry, just heard something that was slightly distracting. I don't know if you heard.
Okay. But you see, you've got that complete short story. Did that one about the...
Well, I'd like to write a second draft. The end is not very good.
Okay, this was the map one, wasn't it? Not
Yeah.
map. Wandering
The
around.
traveling, wandering around one.
Okay.
Then I have a bunch of starter ideas everywhere, but I'm not very good at finishing or planning anything. I have a lot more in terms of articles, but that's less difficult. And I had started after reading Atomic Habits, and I then quickly went out the window. The idea of writing one sentence a day as a minimum thing.
Mm-hmm.
But where it went out the window was, or at least, I don't know, this is a bit of an excuse, but I was realizing I needed a project. And I needed time properly towards it, because otherwise I can write random sentences. That's not a problem for me, but the problem is planning and writing something that's complete.
So like a whole topic or a whole theme or a whole...
Well, for
whatever.
example, to finish the second draft of this story, or even the first one, to be honest, I needed to spend more time than writing a sentence when I'm journaling and going, oh yeah, I said I was going to write a sentence of fiction and write something random, but then it's not actually thinking of because when writing the second draft, I need to think about it and planning it a lot more than just randomly writing.
Although she does
Does that make
say,
sense?
yeah, she does say in Bird by Bird, just write, and you might write 6 pages and there's one thing in it that's good. So you keep that.
Sure, that's true.
So there's always a counter argument to whatever thing.
Anyway, one way or another, I'm not having a habit of writing at the moment, so I need to pick it up again and find a structure that works for me.
And you do, like, you journal almost every day. You meditate every day, right?
Yeah. Yes, that I do. So I write in my journal.
That's not the same though, is it? It's not the same as having a...
Well, it's writing, but it's not the same as writing for publishing.
I've found that journaling has helped my writing. Have you not found that?
Perhaps, I don't know.
I've definitely found that. I did an experiment where for a few days, all my journal entries I wrote as like 5-word sentences. What I mean is, when I would journal for a day, everything I wrote on the page was like 3 to 5 word sentences. So when I was explaining whatever happened in my day, it was all like short. And I noticed it was a completely different stylistic change, where reading it might have been terrible, but it was really interesting for me to put. It was almost like a series of disconnected thoughts, but it did seem to flow. But I found that my journal, that's helped me with my writing. I was quite surprised by that. I didn't expect it to.
I'm sure, but I don't really know.
Because also in this conversation, I'm also thinking of what's his face? Who's the guy who writes something every day? That always seems to be really short and cool. Seth Godin.
Oh, right, yeah.
I don't know how he does it.
Well, that's the kind of category of people, even though I was talking about people that I know in the same style, that I'm like, how do you do it? Where do you find time? I know that you have life, children, a job. I don't have any of those things, and I don't have to.
He's and then how many books? He's written loads of books as well, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, he's written loads.
Yeah. I don't know how he does it.
Anyhow, but yes, I need to get back to writing. You're right. Yeah.
Something. So maybe we should sum up now. It feels like a good place to
I didn't even talk about Dresden, but I can't tell you much. So good.
Well, maybe
it's nice. By the way, it's also on the reverse.
Yeah.
Really cool to spend a weekend completely abandoned myself, like just geeking on a book and finishing it and reading immediately the sequel.
I love the first one, Stormfront. It's so good.
It gets better, and I'm at 16 and 17, which is the end. Well, the latest published rather, and in the 16 and 17. So I mean, things have been going well. They go crescendo from the first book on to the 17th, to be honest. But
Because you said you thought 18th is going to be the last one.
No, I don't.
It's
know.
not. Oh, okay.
I don't know. I doubt it. I frankly doubt it. Anyway, it keeps getting better and better and better, and there's a lot of stuff that have just been, how to say, like things that have been building up for however many books, like many books are coming to fruition, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm left with so many questions. I want to know who he is, what he's more about, his background, how he became a wizard.
I still don't know most of that. There's some I know, but it's so good. The intertwined number cast of characters around him is just amazing. The politics, even though very cheesy, and I just had to, for the first time in the whole series, it didn't come, the previous book doesn't come to a conclusion. So it does to a certain degree, but then basically the sequel takes over from the same exact scene within a big thing goes on.
Oh wow. Yeah. Wow. Because it was when I first started reading it, my initial reaction was, this isn't that good.
No, but then, honestly, the first few books are it gets much better after the
I'm
third,
sure it
fourth,
does,
but
the interesting thing was 30 pages. I was still reading.
Yes.
I was like,
I thought the same. The first two books, I was like, this is not that good, but you're just completely like reading it.
It's a really thoroughly enjoyable reading experience.
Absolutely.
So
very enjoyable.
Why would you not? It's great. So I think what I was going to say is did we ever pick how many books we were going to read in the year? I think you did.
I did. The thing I haven't done yet since last week is, well, you did. I thought you did. You said 20 or 22.
Did I say 20? Okay.
21 or 22. I can't remember.
I finished Bullshit Jobs. I also ended up rereading The Alchemist.
Mine is 55. Well, 24 books and 31 plus mangas and graphic novels.
Okay.
Because they count on Goodreads and the Goodread Challenge, and that's what I was like, all right, well, I'll do that.
I actually had a student ask me, do you have Goodreads? And I was like, no, one of my friends is telling me about it. And I can see why it's a really good way of keeping track of what you read.
Well, there's that, and because I just did it right now. I don't do that often enough, and I should extract them. Everything I read on my Kindle is linked on Goodreads because it belongs to Amazon. So all my highlights are right there. I just went and navigated to all my highlights from Bird by Bird. They're right here.
Wow. Okay, that's good. That's good. That could be a reason to get so all my other highlights of all my Kindle books. If I create a Goodreads account, will they just like magically appear?
Yeah. Good writing is about telling the truth. We're a species that needs and wants to understand who we are.
That's early on.
I highlighted a lot of stuff. Yeah, and it tells you like at what point in the book was.
Yeah, of course. That's what else. What's another?
Vonnegut
what would be a good one to end with?
I don't know.
Maybe why the book is called Bird by Bird.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Which was my theme for.
Is it your theme for the year?
No, not this year. It was for a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay.
Wait, I would like.
It's not early on. It doesn't feel like it's early on. It feels like it's some way into the book.
I'm just opening it because it's in the blurb about the book.
Oh, is it?
30 years ago, it is the blurb about the book.
Oh, okay.
30 years ago, my older brother, who was 10 years old at the time, was trying to get a report on birds written that he'd had 3 months to write. It was due the next day. We were out at our family cabin in Bolinas, and he was at the kitchen table, close to tears, surrounded by binder paper and pencils and an open book books on birds. immobilized by the hugeness of the task ahead. Then my father sat down beside him, put an arm around my brother's shoulder, and said, "Bird by bird, buddy. Just take it bird by bird." It's a good way to end it.
It's a good
But
way to
that
end it.
said, what he does have and that I need to have is a deadline and or a commitment. Well, he was given the commitment to write the report on birds, and I don't have a thing about writing, and I need to have them. So picking up my newsletter, changing my website finally, because I keep putting that off, is I need to figure out what I'm doing with my newsletter. Putting it off, and or joining a writing group or some kind of structure that supports me for that.
You have a lot to say about anything and everything. I'd quite happily read it.
Yeah, and you're not the only person to tell me that. So, and I do enjoy writing.
It's calling.